Well, g'day guys, Carl Quested here. Thanks for joining me again. Pretty excited today, back on my very home turf when I first moved to Australia, on the Sunshine Coast. You can smell the fresh air and the sun is out for us. And today I'm joined by our 2016 Salesperson of the Year, Mark Mcgill. Mark.
G'day Carl, thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us, mate. Let's get the show on the road.
No worries.
So, I'm just going to back up here. What's that in the back? Did I just hear something rumbling around in the back?
Oh, that's...
What's that?
I better give that to Tristan. That's my 2014 award. So.
Oh, is it? Oh,
so
okay,
yeah.
that one. We have to pass that one down the chain.
We'll pass it down the chain. I don't need it anymore.
So let's talk real estate then. So,
sure.
When did you first get into real estate?
Okay, so I've just racked up 7 years with Amber's office now. So, and I'm a one agency man, so I've never worked with anyone else but Amber.
Yep.
But what happened was back in those days where the GFC was wiping out all the developers on the coast here, I was an architect and I was frantically looking for new development clients and new house design clients and trying to generate business for our architectural business. So I was actually doing a lot of lead generation and a lot of prospecting, but for architectural work. And there was just none around. And so what I was doing was I was going around to all the real estate agents who had old houses that could benefit from a renovation or old blocks of land that I could do a concept design for. And I was saying to the real estate agents, I'll do this concept for you for free. Hopefully if the buyer likes it, then we'll get the business back. And that's what I was doing to try and generate work. So what happened was I was going around to all these real estate agents and very, very quickly I worked out I was helping them sell a bucket load of land and bucket load of houses and I was still getting no work out of it. And Amber at the time actually said, Mark, you're crazy. You should be getting paid for this. Why don't you use your knowledge and jump into real estate? Now that conversation happened about 6 months prior to actually joining. I had a big developer client go belly up and that was kind of the final nail in the coffin. And I called Amber up and said, look, I'm open and ready to change. Do you really think I can do it? I didn't think I'd have it in me. And she said, Mark, I'll back you. She gave me a job. She made a position available for me. Back in those days, and even now, you have to be put on a retainer. So she took a real punt on me and gave me a go. And I'm forever grateful for giving me that chance.
And going back 7 years, that would have been quite early in
her business,
in the Amber Werchon group as well, wouldn't it?
Yeah. So her business was still within its first year.
Yeah, right.
So it was very early days for her. So it was a big risk, but yeah, I'd like to think it paid off for her.
Yeah.
So I pretty much started in real estate. And I remember my first week in real estate. It was pretty simple. I had a sales manager there that said, call everyone that you know and see if anyone has a property to sell. And my first couple of calls, I only made it to the letter C before I had too much work in my diary. And one of my friends actually had a property that was on the market for 2 years at that time in a suburb which the Sunshine Coast people know as Nambour. It's not a high class suburb. It's a very entry level working class suburb. And anyway, she had a big block of land up there. It had been on the market for 2 years, and she said, look, you're my friend, I'll give you an open list on it, I'll back you. Everyone said, don't take on open lists, don't do this, and I just wanted work, I was hungry. And I listed it, and I worked out that you could fit 42 dwellings on the site.
Wow.
No one had run a planning analysis on it. And within 15 phone calls, I'd found 2 buyers that were interested in making offers on it. And we sold it for the full price. Now, and that was a $1.275 million sale in Nambour. For anyone that knows Nambour, you don't sell $1 million properties in Nambour.
No.
And no one could believe that deal came together.
So that was your first. It was your first deal.
That was my first deal. Unfortunately, it was a 6-month settlement, so I had to wait. So by the time it hit the tank, it was a fair way down the track.
Yeah.
But that was my first ever sale. When I first started, I was playing the architect angle a lot to try and get in the door, and that's probably my biggest advantage, is that I get in the door a long time before anyone else does, because I really try and encourage people to call me in there before they spend any money on renovations or repairs and things like that. I can give them a really good idea of what is actually worth doing and what's worth spending money on for what will suit the market, and then or save them from spending money on things that are going to add no value and they're just going to get no profit out of it. So that's where my professional knowledge can come in. It's not so much rearranging a few curtains and a few pillows. It's actually generating some serious profit.
Okay. So in terms of when you first started out in the industry, you obviously, were calling through people you knew, and assumedly that background in architecture gave you a pretty strong network. Like you say, you didn't get past C before you were too busy to carry on.
Well, it was a catch-22 though, because I had a really good network of people who had good quality properties and developers and all that, but the biggest challenge I had was that they all knew that I was the new guy on the block. I had no credibility with them as far as experience or runs on the board. And
sure,
yeah, Mark, you're a good architect, but how many of these $1 million properties have you sold? And
yep.
And so I still had to earn my stripes and get some runs on the board before I could break through into my existing networks.
Okay, so what else did you do in those early days? Like what were some of the other things that you did to find new listings?
Yeah, probably the thing I did a little bit differently is that I really worked hard and promoted my successes. So whenever I got a sale, I always saved 10% of the proceeds of the sale and put that into promoting it. And in the very, very early days, I spent money that I didn't have to actually market myself, like not rely on the brand, not rely on the company, but actually back myself and spent that money.
So literally 10%. So let's say your comms on a property, let's use round figures, say a $300,000 property.
Yep.
Your commission, let's say it was.
If you keep the numbers simple, let's say $10,000. Out of that, on a 55% split, you keep $5.5, and then your taxes and super and all that come out. So realistically, you're probably keeping about $4,000 out of each sale.
Okay.
So that would give me a $400 marketing budget to promote that sale.
Sure. Yep.
So with $400, I could either do a quarter-page ad in the newspaper, or I could do letterbox drops, or I could invest it in some digital marketing, and over time, like 10% of each sale over time adds up, and I still do it even to this day.
So you still do that 10% allocation?
Yes. So
that's interesting. So even now to this day, where obviously I guess your reputation is far ahead of where it was before, you're still sort of setting that non-negotiable, putting 10% aside.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, I don't necessarily spend that 10% now. I don't have to spend as much as what I used to, because obviously, as you said, like your reputation and your visibility makes up for a fair bit of it. If you have 3 months off, like you're invisible, you're forgotten, people think you've left the industry. Yeah. So you do have to maintain some level of presence there.
And obviously I'm catching you on one of the few days that you're actually in country as well, so.
Look, it's important to stay fresh. So, because, it is, I was talking to a friend about this just this morning actually, and it doesn't matter what business you're in, everyone works hard and everyone gets stress, and then I see it a lot, especially with small business owners as well. They are the business, and they never give themselves a break, and they never give themselves time off, and real estate agents are no different. And I've seen it time and time again where I'm actually less effective if I've worked myself if you're tired and you're flat and you have no energy, people don't want to do business with you, whereas by having short regular breaks, I find that I don't mind working hard and then having a couple of days off or a bit of a break, and then you come home and you're fresh and you're energized, and look, no matter how good you are technically, people list with your enthusiasm and your energy.
Yep.
And people want to deal with people who are excited. All you need is one person who is more passionate, more hungry, and in a lot more debt than you to fight a lot harder, and they're a real threat. When I hear real estate agents whinging about I wouldn't get out of bed for 100 grand, I was living on 30 grand, having been on 60 grand, and this is after, 10 years of architecture, yep, on a $60,000 wage, and then going backwards to 30,000 just to try and keep the business afloat. to hear agents go, oh, I wouldn't get out of bed for 100 grand, it's like, well, pull your head in. Yeah, so like when I first started, like I was hungry and I had a lot of debt. Like I had no option but to be the first in the office and the last to leave. Like I looked at the best person in our office, who was Jackie Crane. She was fantastic, and I learned so much from her, because what I would do is I'd go into the office after everyone else has gone home. Jackie would be in there making phone calls, and there's nothing better than for a new person than listening to a seasoned pro, making the phone calls and hearing the conversations and the real life. Like, you get a lot of scripts and dialogues training, but that's not real life. And to hear someone as good as Jackie on the phone, and her conversations, and you could hear, if you couldn't hear, you could guess what the other person was saying, and you knew how she was handling it and how she responded. So I learned a lot of valuable lessons from that very, very quickly. And back in those days, Amber was on the tools as well. And Amber would come into the office at that time of night, and I got to hear Amber making the phone calls. Yep. So I'm very fortunate to have learned from those people. And I'm seeing it more and more where buyers don't want to call. They want to email us or text us, and you try calling them and they don't want to answer, and they send a message back saying, please SMS me, or just answer my question. And so there is a balance there. I am trying to develop my business more so that it responds to what the buyers want, because quite commonly buyers all ask the same questions on nearly every property, and I don't understand why most agents don't just have that information ready to give to them straight away, or just put the information up in the first place. Yeah. So like, if you've got a property with low body corpse, why not publish the body corpse instead of, and I understand
having to answer those questions.
Yeah. And I understand like the whole, I want the lead, I want to talk to them, but if the customer doesn't want to talk to us, it makes it very hard. I'd much rather deal with the people who actually have genuine interest and provide the information to the people who are browsing.
Yeah, it's funny. I was having a chat with somebody on Facebook the other day about service levels that agents give, and they were sort of drawing the comparison that the cheaper agent provides less of a service, and I said, but sometimes the service level that you think people want isn't necessarily the service they want. Like, agents believe that sellers want to have a sit-down meeting once a week. The reality is, me personally as a seller, just send me a bloody email. I don't need to see every single, some people need that level of attention, but other people really are just happy with, and if you know that up front and are prepared to work in multiple ways, then I think absolutely, you've got to be prepared to work in the way your buyer or seller wants you to work.
Well, like I'm probably a bad example, but I'm a really simple buyer. Like, I just want to know the information. It's yes, no. Like, my last two properties I bought virtually sight unseen. Yeah. I knew them. I knew where they were. There's certain things I can live with, and it's just like, yep, here's the contract. Just give me the information. Here's the contract. Here I go. When I bought my car, like, I did all the research on the car online, so you know everything about the car. The only thing I needed to do was drive it. Yep. So that was my point of call. And in a way, I think a lot of buyers are quite time poor now, and they want to do all the research first, and essentially the call is to drive it.
So Mike, when did you, as an agent, find that systems came into play for you? How quickly did you sort of work out that systems and processes could make a big difference to how you operate?
Very, very quickly, actually. So in my first 6 months is when I put on my first PA, because after my first 6 months, actually it was closer to 8 months. So 8 months in, I was already way too busy. I was carrying about 45, 50 listings at the time, and some of the guys in the office could see that I was almost at that burnout point, and I was struggling to manage 45 sellers on my own. So I put on my first PA, and that was an expensive exercise, because and a lot of it was to do with the structure and the model, and we kind of hadn't really worked that out before I put someone on. I just put someone on and in
tried
the hope
to do
of,
it as you went.
I put someone on saying fix me, and that didn't work. And what very great guy, and he was good at what he did, but the split that we had, very quickly we worked out it was not profitable, because he was actually the second highest paid agent in the office without actually having made a listing or a sale. So it was a very costly exercise for me, and we tried to make it work, but it just was not financially viable. So we let him go, and then that still left the mess of all this extra business that we had. So I still needed another person, so we put on the second person. That person is still in our office today, and she's an agent in her own right, and she's doing really, really well. I'd like to say I'm the credit for her success, but I think she can take a fair bit of that herself as well. But very quickly in that, we worked together for about 6 months, and very quickly we worked out that she was better off as her own agent, and I still needed to get myself sorted. So that's when I actually took a step back and went, hang on, no, I need to get more organised, and I need to get my systems better, because having a second person there was useless if I didn't have anything I didn't have any instruction for them. They couldn't read my mind. So it was very, very difficult. And what I did is I had a better look at the systems that we had in our office, and a better look at some of the digital technology, and I actually just got a lot more organised, and so I developed some really good templates and just some good processes and some automated things that I could do. And then once that was all working and humming, then I was able to introduce, it was actually a 16-year-old work experience student in our office who took over that role, and she was able to, I had this system so simplified that literally a 16-year-old kid could run it.
Wow.
And she was with me for 2.5 years.
Okay. So proof in the pudding that system was validated.
It was very, very effective.
Yeah.
And naturally, like, she grew up and did the world travel thing, and it's actually quite nice. She's actually back on the coast in real estate again now.
Awesome.
It's just a shame that she's with one of the competitors.
But using your knowledge against you.
Yeah. It's all right. She's doing well. But yeah, so that kind of started my systems, and then from there, so she worked part-time for me. She did 15 hours a week, and then I brought on a second part-timer. So the work experience student was just basically doing the prospecting that I was not getting around to doing. The second part-timer took on a more administrative role.
Yep.
And then eventually we were able to grow those, and it got to a point where I needed a full-time person. So that's when I put on Susan. So she was, she came out of a job advertisement, and yeah, she won Queen REIQ Rookie of the Year in that first year with me.
Wow.
So she was absolutely excellent. She's still in the industry in another area now, so she's up on the range. I think she's still absolutely killing it. And our team was going, and then I introduced another person to my team, which was Michael, and he's still with me today. So he's been with me for 2 years, and he is a little bit more of a mind reader. So we do have systems in place, but he's also an agent as well in his own right.
Okay. So when you talk about the systems, if we get sort of specific into what you had in place for them to do, was it sort of just around some of the KPIs, like for the prospecting PA, for example? Did they have to make a certain number of connections a day, or what exactly did you task them with doing?
No, well, it's interesting you bring up the KPIs, because anyone that knows me knows that I'm not really a numbers person. I've never really focused hard on KPIs, and it's probably one of my shortcomings.
Okay.
But like, for example, in the past, all of my assistants, lead generation was never a problem. I was drinking from a fire hose anyway as far as business coming in. So I didn't really need the prospecting side from the PAs. It was more managing all the other stuff that went along with the sale, managing the buyers, managing the sellers, doing all the reports, doing all the admin, all the data, and getting the data clean and accurate. So that was majority of their role, not so much bringing in business. So that's why I probably never really had that much need for KPIs.
And so how did you measure them though? Like what did you use to actually say, yes, you're doing a good job, or no, you need to lift your game?
Laughs per day. So like whether we're like, when everything's going well, you're laughing.
Yeah.
And Michael and I are always cracking up in the office still. So when things are going well, you're laughing. If things are not going well, you're not laughing.
Yeah.
So that's probably the only sort of benchmark I had. And then and group certificates, like you mark it on profit and group certificate. that first 6 months is really survival. I try and cushion and protect my cadets from having to do that grind in their first year. And they all have that exponential curve at about the 6 to 8 month mark is when you see their exponential curve kick in. So
Sure.
I'm not too critical in that first 6 months because I know that it's coming.
Yeah. And so do you always have an expectation that your cadets are going to move on? Like, do you recruit them having that in mind, that the idea is for them to eventually become the next rookie?
Absolutely. I want them to be their own agents in their own right. Now, I'm glad that Michael's chosen to stay with me, but and I want to give value to him for staying with me. Now, we both realise that we're more effective as a team, and we're both more profitable as a team. There's certain things that he knows that he can't do on his own, and there's certain things that I need him to do for me that I can't do. So.
And I don't expect you to disclose off on camera, but when we were talking before, what you mentioned to me was that he is earning a very, very good income as your 2IC essentially.
Absolutely. So yeah, he's doubled his income in the last 12 months.
Yep.
So I'd like to think he's pretty happy with that.
It's testament, I think, to your character when I put up the post about that I was going to be interviewing you and said, can I have some questions? All of them were sort of light-hearted, jokey. I think, but what I was getting to there is just that you seem to have somehow struck this balance that I think a lot of agents struggle with, which is that stress level of actually being able to really thoroughly enjoy what you do and provide a great service. Whereas I think a lot of people get stuck in that real sort of high stress level area.
Well, I still remember my first listing. I won it. So my very, very first listing appointment that I went for, I was called in off roster, and I was up against two really big name agents, and it was a Sunday, and I'd called our sales manager to say, help, I've got a listing, can you come with me? And he's like, no, you'll be fine, just wing it. And I won that business against two really, really high profile agents, and not only did I list it, but I listed it as an auction. I had a good marketing campaign. I had a $6,000 marketing budget with my first listing. And I asked her why she went with me, and she's like, you knew your stuff, firstly. It was an architectural home, so I knew the home really well. But secondly, it was the enthusiasm. And
so you mentioned there about that one being listed as auction.
So Amber's always been an auction-orientated office. So when I first started, all our training was around the benefits of auction and why it was a good option, etc. And so I really knew no better. So I've actually bid at an auction myself. So it's interesting from an agent's point of view, putting a consumer hat on.
Yeah.
And the range of emotions you go through, and I missed out on that auction. And I forever tell people this is the house that I missed out on by $1,000 at the end, and I still regret that. I'm not over it, as you can see. But the good thing about that experience was that, and I went 50 grand above my self-imposed limit on that auction. So
even as an agent,
I knew what I was doing.
Well, mate, we're just coming back to your place now. So just to wrap up, firstly, who are you styled by today? Is this a Westwood? Is this an Alex Perry?
This is a Ted Baker.
Ted Baker, okay.
Ted Baker, so.
So, mate, just as we wrap up, is there any advice that you would give to people that are coming into the industry or thinking about real estate as a potential career path?
Yeah, I think really you have to view your first 12 months as an apprenticeship. You really need to soak in as much information as you can, and you want to take advice from people who are doing well. Like you get lots of well-meaning advice.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people that are like saying it but not doing it. So I think you really need to choose your advice very, very carefully and just stay enthusiastic. People list with energy and passion. You can be the most skillful agent in the world, but if you're not likable and you're not passionate about it, then it's probably not going to get you anywhere anyway.
Yeah, sure.
And do things for the right reasons. It always the karma train comes around.
Yeah.
I've seen it many times in this job. Like I've been around long enough now to see the karma train come back and reward me pretty well. So
Awesome.
yeah.
Mark, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks very much, Carl.
Guys, see you next time.